I am delighted to introduce our commencement speaker, Bishop Peter Smith of the Archdiocese of Portland, Oregon. Bishop Smith was born in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa. He earned a Bachelor of Commerce degree in Business Administration and Marketing in 1981 and earned a law degree in 83, both from the University of Natal in Pietermaritzburg. He moved to the United States in 1983, working in South Bend, Indiana, and here in Minneapolis. He entered the seminary in 1996 and earned a Master's of Arts degree in Theology in 2000 and a Master's of Divinity degree in 2001, both from Mount Angel Seminary in Oregon. Peter was ordained a priest in June of 2001 and first served as parochial vicar at Our Lady of the Lake Parish in Lake Oswego, Oregon. In 2004, he studied canon law at the Catholic University of America, earning a licentiate degree. He served as pastor of St. Rose of Lima Parish in Portland until 2006, when he was appointed Vicar General. He was ordained a bishop in 2014. It is an honor to have you with us today. Please join me in welcoming Bishop Peter Smith.
It's good to be back here with you all. I'm also part of People of Praise, so since I've been in the United States, I've had this ongoing connection with Trinity School. The first family I lived with in South Bend, Indiana, their oldest child was in the first graduating class of Trinity School in South Bend. And I was there for the epic moment when the class was doing the importance of being earnest. And one student, Lee Thompson, who was playing Jack, forgot his words. I'm sure that's never happened to any of you, right? And in the long silence and pause, everyone knows what's happening. John DeSells, also a member of that graduating class, now a doctor in Colorado Springs, looked at him and folded his arms and he said, "At a loss for words, Jack?" That was pandemonium, and then they cued Lee and they went on from there. The family living next to us, when I was living with this family, I had twin boys. And the 7th grade recorder concert happened. And apparently, they started the concert with the first twin, went all the way through, and they concluded it with the other boy. And as he was coming out, somebody in the audience gasped out loud, and it was heard, "Oh my gosh, they're doing it all again." I'm sure all those of you who have done recorder concerts have had therapy for your PTSD or whatever. So after about 6.5 years, I came out here to the Twin Cities with guys from the Brotherhood of the People of Praise, and some of them were actually, at one point, the other three were all teaching at Trinity. And when we arrived, Trinity was in the Episcopal Church downtown Minneapolis. And a year later, they moved to the old River Ridge facility, which used to be owned by Control Data, where they made their computer chips and so on. And I remember those next years building the north wing on there and getting the circle auditorium done. But the mad rush to get that first day of school, the building ready for the first day of school. And People of Praise members were there until probably, after midnight, working there, so that when it opened the next day, that facility was ready for the students that came. It was a wonderful place. That's where River Ridge got its name from, and you could walk down the hill to the bass ponds there, and they had you could walk through and do all these observations for life science. And I had an interesting moment there, because the last 2 years that I was there, I was actually a part-time administrator for Trinity. So I was on that side of the building a lot. And one morning I looked out the window and there was this big snake out there. Now, growing up in South Africa, my brothers and I used to go out and catch snakes and so on. You know, you do crazy things for fun when you're teenagers. So I saw this thing and I realized it's not a rattlesnake, so I was out the building, grabbed it. It was early spring, so it was a garter snake warming itself in the sun. So he struggled for a while. I kept him in my hands. It was warm, so he calmed down. Came running back into the building and went to Mike Keeba's classroom. Now Father Mike Keeba, who teaches at Mount Angel Seminary. and went into the classroom and said, "Hey, Mike, I caught this. You students want to look at this." And so he stopped the class and had all the students take out paper and do observations about this garter snake that I was holding. The kids were touching it and so on. That's another one of those moments that I remember from being at the old Trinity at River Ridge. I was also there in attendance when the beginnings of that era of Trinity's sports dominance, or at least prominence, began, when on a rainy, muddy evening at Burnsville High School, Trinity School defeated the defending state high school champions Burnsville 1-0. It was a glorious moment, and on the front page of the newspaper the next day, there it was, Trinity Stun Blaze, and it had all this interest coming for Trinity, and it began a period of about 7-8 years of Trinity sports were something that everyone just gathered around. It was a wonderful sort of community event. And then as I came to the end of my time working for People of Praise and Trinity, Bill Walker tasked me to develop a 10-year plan for the development of the school and projection for doubling the school, which I did before I left to go to Oregon in the seminary. And I'm glad to see that some of those proposals were actually accepted. So, getting to Portland, there was a bit of a break, but now we have a Trinity Academy in Portland, and some of our guys are teaching there as well. And it is already making an impact. One of the students, not the first, but I think the third or fourth graduating class, is now one of our seminarians for the Archdiocese, and he really made a huge impact on the Archbishop when he showed up for his interview. At the time it was all Zoom, wearing a full suit and tie and being incredibly articulate. So he's beginning his theology in the fall. This model of education is spreading. The stream is widening. It's going beyond what it began with the Trinity model. And I'll give you one example. There's an institute in Denver that's promoting Catholic liberal education, and we just made a decision about 2 months ago to have one of our grade schools pilot this program in the Archdiocese of Portland to start developing the kind of education you receive at Trinity School in going forward. What was pretty funny was I got into this conversation. They had their lead guy. We did a Zoom with him. So he started explaining like we were completely clueless, and I just said, Andrew, I'm part of People of Praise and Trinity Schools. Oh, next thing, do you know this person? Do you know this person? And so on. And finally, the Archbishop said, okay, guys, enough. Let's get back to business. So it was a great moment because what we see all this commonality, and they're taking and tweaking what has begun here with Trinity School. And this stream is broadening and going further. Good things endure. Good things develop. And it's a growing blessing for many people, in a very particular way for all you who are graduating. This is a blessing for you. It's a gift that you have received. As you heard earlier, people have invested in you. Your teachers, your parents, your fellow students, your coaches, your families. As Mr. Hendrickson said, and my first comments at my ordination as bishop, I said, I didn't get you on my own. None of us gets to where we are on our own. People invest in us and allow us. All the parents here understand exactly what that means. They invest in us. Our parents all invested in us, just like teachers and everybody else. And what we want to see is you go out and you bless the world and the people around you with the kind of blessing that you've received here. However God leads you to do it, however you discern that, that's what we want to see you do. And above all, in this time, in this world, and in our crazy culture, what we need is people who are reasoned, prayerful, and properly critical. I say reason because in the world in which we live, we're much more of a motivistic culture. There's no reason. It's just like this emotional response to everything. Prayerful because we live in a world where God is being excarnated and is having a profoundly negative effect on people. And properly critical because people want to cancel everybody. We're offended by somebody else, by having to acknowledge somebody else has an opinion that may be different than our own. And the world needs what you can bring to it. I live in Portland, Oregon. Many people there, or at least more than a few, proudly refer to it as the People's Republic of Portland. And if you came there, I could take you to parts of it where it's a secular ground zero for the United States. And while the rest of us may think we're glad it's over there, sooner or later it starts coming your way. God is being excarnated from our world. We talk about the incarnation, but our world and our culture is excarnating God, and our culture is being impoverished as a result. Yet what do we see? A desire among people, even the Portland hipsters. There's a desire for some sense of transcendence, reverence, the divine in the midst of all this. It's part of what our DNA is. And as much as the culture sweeps it aside, people still have this desire. And it's interesting when you look at how people are living. It's like people are living in the midst of this open field like grass. And the wind blows this way and that way and this way and that way, and they sway with it. Their lives are like weather vanes. Yet deep down, they know inside there is something more. And you know there is something more. What people are looking for is what you have been educated in: truth, beauty, and goodness. And that is a desperate necessity in a world with a culture that is a mile wide and an inch deep. And I would say especially goodness in these days. People respond when they see real goodness before them, tangibly manifest. And you have an opportunity to do that. As Paul writes to the Philippians, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." Not just think, live them and manifest them in this world. God is renewing creation, and He's doing it by forming a people in whose lives He lives individually and corporately as a faith community, all those who believe in Him. And we are called, as people of faith, to live as Jesus calls us to serve as He serves, to be His witnesses, and to be His co-workers in renewing creation. We can look at this and say, why me, Lord? Why us? Why this time? And I would respond to you with the words of Joan of Arc when she was asked whether she was afraid. And her wonderful response was this: "I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this." You were born for this. All of us were. What we need to do is live lives that begin to change our culture. Often what we have is these strategies. We're going to do this and plan this and do such and such. Here's the bottom line. Culture eats strategy for lunch. It's true. Culture eats strategy for lunch. And you see this, and John Paul undermined communism, not by challenging it politically, but by holding up all that was good in the culture of the peoples who were oppressed by it. And communism had no answer. And culture is when our way of life embodies how we live, our beliefs, our values, our things of importance, all those things that matter to us. And when we live in a culture and become immersed in it, it is formative, it is educative, and it is directive. We act out of that. If you want to change something or an organization, start by changing the culture. The culture around us is very impoverished. And overall, the things we tend to see, at least I see in the Portland area and elsewhere, is it tends to be self-absorbed, self-projective, individualistic, and emotivistic. You can't build relationships that way. And as human beings, in the end, what we really want is relationship, friendship, and companionship. If you're with people when they're dying, you learn that quickly. But Trinity forms you in a culture, and the culture you can bring to the world is truth, beauty, and goodness. And that's the choice you face. You've been given this gift. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to live it? How are you going to make your mark in the world? And again, we can look at it and say, I don't want to have to deal with that. And I will, as a number of people have already used, turn to Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. This is the prayer, by the way, for all new Catholic bishops within the first 2 years. Pray this prayer. When Frodo says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. Oh, yeah. And Gandalf says, so do all who live to see such times. But it is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Paul VI, in one of his encyclicals, had a wonderful little phrase. He said, modern man listens more readily to witnesses than to teachers. Not these teachers, the people in culture. Modern man listens more readily to witnesses than teachers. And when he listens to teachers, it is because they are witnesses. You can tell people things, but when you live it in your lives, that has a powerful credibility that goes beyond any words that you can have. Jesus says, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, throughout Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. So we are called to make a difference. And the mistakes we sometimes make is we look at the immensity of the problem. What difference can I make? But that's not where we're called to make the difference. It's one person, one situation, one circumstance at a time. Mother Teresa was asked once, how is this making any difference? And her comment was, what I do is but a drop in the bucket. But if I do not put my drop in the bucket is less full. And on another time, she told the story of a man walking along the beach, and there'd been a huge storm, and there's all these starfish on the beach dying. As he's walking along, he sees a little boy up there. He's bending down and throwing things into the sea. And as he gets closer, he realizes the little boy is throwing the starfish back into the ocean. And he says to the little boy, what are you doing? And the boy says, I'm saving the starfish. And the man says, there are thousands and thousands of them on this beach. It won't make any difference. And the little boy picks up another one, looks at the man and says, it will to this one, and throws it into the sea. We make a difference on a micro level. One person, one circumstance, one situation at a time. Every one of us can do that. I'll conclude with another Tolkien quote from the real hero of The Lord of the Rings. I know Mr. Hendrickson may or may not agree. That's Sam, the only one in The Lord of the Rings who was able to not be influenced by the allurement of the ring, who was the real foundation, source, strength for Frodo. And there's a moment when Frodo says, I can't do this, Sam. And Sam says, I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back. Only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. And Frodo says to him, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" And he responds, "That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for." There's some good in this world, and it is worth fighting for. Thank you.